All right, I just wanted to thank everybody that watched the previous two videos and all the new subscribers. Pretty cool stuff. Really quick before we start in, I just wanted to let you know that next week we're going to be doing a review of the San Martin Sea Dweller homage. It has a mother of pearl blue dial. Oh man, look at that thing. I really hope it looks as good in person as it does on the website, because it looks pretty freaking sweet on the website.
So you should definitely subscribe and hit that bell. This way you can get notified as soon as that video comes out.
So Aragon. I've seen a bunch of people asking questions about Aragon, which is actually pretty crazy if you think about it, because Aragon's a company that's been around for about 30 years or so. In 1991, Wing and his elder sister actually created Oko International, and shortly thereafter it was followed by the Android watch brand. Now, Aragon and Android are actually exactly the same company. Finkel is Einhorn, Einhorn is Finkel. They're the same people, and that's good, actually. It's been Wing all along. He's the CEO and lead designer, or only designer, I should say. Now, when I say Android, this is not to be confused with Google's Android. In fact, the name's so similar that Wing actually sued Google over the watch's usage of it. That lawsuit ended up settled, though, with Wing essentially selling the name to Google, which was the right move, because I really don't think having to explain to everyone how my watch is an Android but not a smartwatch was really something that I wanted to have to be constantly stuck doing. And so with that, in 2015, Aragon Watches was born from the ashes. Quick note on this, Wing loves dragons, and if you drop the A in Aragon and add a D, you indeed get the word dragon. This also explains the company's main logo, which I rather enjoy. Kinda wish he would use it more often on the dials of his watches, perhaps right above a slightly smaller Aragon logo.
So yeah, 30 years.
That's a hell of a long time to be making watches. It takes a certain amount of conviction and passion to be doing something like that for so long, and even more to be successful at it. And successful he's been, with the Android Alien making its way into the movie Equilibrium, worn by not only its star Christian Bale's John Preston, but also shown as the standard issue for every grammaton cleric in the movie. So the next time you see a crazy, imaginatively unfettered, horrifyingly different watch released from Wing, like this one, or this one, definitely this one, understand that while they may not be for me or you, they are different and unique. And sometimes they're special enough to make it onto the big screen. And by the way, if you haven't seen Equilibrium, watch that movie. It's incredibly cool. So with that bit of history out of the way, what is Aragon to us? Well, in my opinion, Aragon is the working man's watch brand. If you look at brands like Rolex or Hamilton or Seiko, they used to be the working man's watch. Rolex was a brand that anybody could get their hands on. They were known for making tool watches, just like Hamilton and Seiko. The Submariner sold for around $120 in late 1950s, which in today's money would be around $1,070. Also, like Hamilton and Seiko, these are professional tools, used by swimmers, divers, climbers, explorers, pilots. I mean, $1,070 is not really a budget piece by modern standards, but it certainly isn't the near $10,000 it costs today. Seiko and Hamilton, however, were always affordable, and in some realms still are, mostly. But Seiko's prices have become ludicrous on anything beyond the Seiko 5 series or various other base models. By the way, there will be a Seiko video coming at some point to explore that. And Hamilton, though they got their start keeping time for the railways and various military soldiers, have also gone just out of the budget range for anything but the base models. And don't get me wrong, I don't use the term base model here as a derogatory term. The Hamilton Khaki is a handsome watch that anyone should be proud and happy to own. But beyond those base models, things start to get pricey. And that is where Aragon comes in, to save the day. To save the working man. Because Aragon is quite honestly some of the tankiest durable watches on the market, and prices that near anyone can afford. Wing has used this platform to give watch collectors pieces to be proud of, and prices to actually be able to amass a wonderful collection. They use a combination of Swiss, Japanese movements, and everything from the tried and true and quite robust Seiko design and manufactured NH35 to the complicated and elaborate Swiss ETA 7750. He's even recently started using the NE88 chronograph movement. And if you've never heard of that one, you should look it up. It's pretty impressive. So anyway, with all that out of the way, I'm actually going to show you some of my favorite pieces. And we're going to go over a light grazing on these pieces. I'm not going to do an in-depth review, unless you want me to, and if you do, you should definitely tell me in the comments. Okay, so here's my humble collection, and what I'm going to do is just walk you through a couple of the pieces that I like the most. We're going to start off with the Aragon Superjet. So this piece has an abalone dial. It has an NE57 movement with a power reserve. You can see the power reserve on this portion of the dial running down this way here. I especially like this case design due to its Art Deco influences. If you look at the multi-layered side here, and same thing on the other side, it's interesting because even though it's listed as a 44mm watch, it actually fits more like a 42, and I'll show you why. So if we take a measurement of the actual case here, you'll see it's about 44mm. But that doesn't really tell the whole story, because if we take a measurement of where the bezel is, you can see that that is not 44. It's closer to 42. Now, that does something really interesting when it's on your wrist. And what it does is give the watch a smaller appearance. So even though it's a larger watch and has the gravitas of a larger watch, it actually has a much nicer fit. The other thing of note here is this bracelet, which is really, really cool. And honestly, when I wear this thing, I really just can't stop staring at it. The next watch we're going to take a look at is actually another one of my Superjets. If you can't tell, this is one of my favorite designs from Aragon. This one I find especially impressive because of the Damascus dial. The reason I appreciate the Damascus dial so much is because it harkens back to what I was saying earlier in regards to this being a working man's watch. Now, to get Damascus steel requires rolling the same piece of molten steel over and over again and hammering it down until you get all of these groovy patterns. Whether it was done by man or machine, somebody was standing next to this molten metal as it was being formed into the dial of this watch. This is ion plated in gray, which means that you probably would have to be a little careful about where you're wearing it and what exactly you're doing with it. It does have an ETA 2824 movement, covered by sapphire glass on the back and on the front. Of note here is the higher end milled clasp, which is not usually found on most of Aragon's models, but the entire Superjet line, whether it be the lower end or the higher end, does have milled clasps. Next, we're going to take a look at my meteorite dial Divemaster 4. This thing is awesome. It's definitely one of my current favorite watches to wear on a regular basis. Everything about it just hits a spot with me. From the gear-like bezel, which has this industrial-like design to it, to this super thick and nice bracelet. The bracelet is 22mm, the watch itself is 45mm. Obviously, screw-down crown, just like every Aragon model. Crown is signed, again, just like every Aragon model. We have sapphire glass on the front and a ceramic bezel. The bezel is fully loomed, obviously along with the indices on the dial and the minute and hour markers. Here again we have a milled clasp. And I believe Wing still has these available on his website for purchase if you wanted the IP gray model. The rest of them are entirely sold out. If this video has made you decide to buy one, I suggest you get over there quickly because I think he only has like 40 of them left. Alright, so here we have my tried and true Evo. Now, this is my first ever Aragon watch, so it definitely holds a place in my heart. If you notice, it is completely beat to hell. This is a watch that I wore every day, and still do on occasion, to work. And the reason I did that is because it's a tank, like I was saying. Again, we have a gear-like bezel here that really catches the light nicely because of its polished and brushed pattern. Still incredibly firm on the bezel clicking, much more so than my Seiko Orange Monster NH35 movement.
Now this watch does have mineral glass as opposed to sapphire, and I know that that can be a turnoff for some people, and honestly for me it is a lot of times as well. But something that Wing has thought of here that a lot of other manufacturers don't, except maybe Seiko on occasion, is making the bezel curve into the glass. If you can see, the crystal of the watch actually sits a bit lower than the bezel, so when you impact the surface it doesn't actually hit the glass of the watch. Great design, because I've definitely hit this and you can see the marks on the sides of the bezel here, and yet after all these years there are no scratches on the glass. On this particular model we do have a pressed clasp as opposed to milled. Alrighty, so now we're going to take a look at the Parma 2. Now you might be thinking that this is an incredibly thick watch, and at 17 millimeters thick, you'd be right. It is very thick. But, as I'm going to show you in a moment, there's something about the way that it falls on your wrist that is just right. So, first we'll take a look at the actual casing and bracelet of the watch. If you look, it has like a interesting raised pattern on the center there, which, when it's on your wrist, looks really, really cool. Bezel clicking is super firm, just like all the Aragon watches. And as usual, we have a signed crown. Even though this is a newer model, there is a pressed clasp here as opposed to the milled one, which honestly, I'm fine due to the price point that this was at. See, that's the thing. If you're going to have lesser features on a watch, that's completely fine with me, as long as the price reflects that. Okay, and here's the wrist shot that I was talking about. Now, if you look, yeah, it's a really big watch. And it's thick. But it does fit. And it fits really well. The lines are just outstanding. And the way that bracelet takes the light in, it's really, really nice. And one model left to cover. So this is the Aragon Divemaster 2. 45 millimeters. NH35 movement. It does have a pressed clasp, but you can buy a milled upgrade. Bracelet construction is incredibly good. It feels great. Bezel action is very nice. Again, signed crown. I'm pretty sure all the Aragon models have a signed crown. That blue dial is just outstanding. It's so deep, it feels like you could fall into it. So that's pretty much it in regards to my favorite models. I'm aware of the fact that this video sounds a bit like an advertisement for Aragon, but to be perfectly honest with you, that's because I really don't have very many negative things to say about the company. Their customer service is absolutely outstanding, with people like Christina Loriano behind the phones and behind their Facebook account that will answer any questions that you have. I can't say that I've ever dealt with them with a problem, because I've never had a problem with an Aragon watch. I'm pretty sure I could count on one hand the number of people that I've actually seen have a defect with an Aragon watch. Now, that's pretty crazy considering that, like I said, they've been in service for about 30 years. All that being said though, I would like to cover a couple of the negatives. For one thing, their loom. What I've done here is taken a couple of photos, each one approximately 5 minutes apart, so you could see how the loom comes down over time. I've also included in the shot the Heimdaller monster that you saw in the previous video. The monster is noticeably brighter and maintains its loom far longer than the Aragon watches. Is that a deal breaker? Absolutely not. It's just something that I thought you should be aware of. The other thing I find to be somewhat confusing is the choice of the red seconds hand in every single model, or almost every single model. And the last thing that I find a little bit confusing at times is Wing's choice to use green loom. Now I don't mean green when it's glowing, I mean green in broad daylight. The only other deal breaker I could ever possibly imagine anyone having with Aragon is just their sheer size. They are large watches, and they tend to fit larger wrists better. But that's not to say that they can't fit a smaller wrist. The Superjet, as I showed you, has a design that conforms to a much smaller wrist, much better than any of the other models. That is except, of course, for his new Divemaster 42, which is 42 millimeters. Honestly, if you do have a smaller wrist and you've been on the fence about buying that Divemaster 42, you need to do it immediately. You will not regret your purchase. Unfortunately, I don't have one to show you, but that's because I'm holding out hope that we get a Divemaster 4 with multicolored dials, because I will be all over those when they come out, or if they come out. Well, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative. Like I said, if you've ever been on the fence about getting an Aragon, I can tell you for sure, if you like the actual design of the watch, you're going to love the quality of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Don't forget to subscribe so you can catch that Sea Dweller video.